Good morning. May I join in welcoming all of you here, regular members of the congregation, visitors, families, friends, and people of other faiths. On this day, we are all one. Happy news is that we have two of our grandchildren here this morning, Gabriel and Amira Sky. And the good news for you is that Gabriel has a soccer game at 1 o'clock in JP, and I have guaranteed him he would make it. So try to be fairly short. On behalf of the congregation, may I also express our gratitude to Tad, to Dorothy, to Rob, for the wonderful work that you have done, the leadership and the service that you have shown to this church and to this congregation over these months. We're deeply grateful as a people. This Sunday, of course, is a day of remembrance. 10 years ago on this day, at almost this very hour, terrorists struck in New York, Washington, and Pennsylvania, savagely killing more innocents than we could bear. Even today's freshmen, 7 or 8 years old at the time, can tell you precisely where they were when they heard, just as many of us older can recall the moment when Walter Cronkite announced that President Kennedy had been shot. Some memories are indelible. That September 11th also opened a door into what has become an extremely difficult, disappointing decade for this country. A stream of wars, natural disasters, economic shocks, and moments of political lunacy. We have entered a dark wood, as Dante would call it, and we do not yet see sunlight. Today, and in those days surrounding, there will be a multitude of fora where people will honor victims and the families of 9/11. We will celebrate the heroes as well, firemen and policemen climbing up the stairs of the Twin Towers towards death, even as others scrambled down towards safety. Their stories will be told again, their pictures cherished. In other gatherings, elbows flying, we will debate what followed, a 10-year war on terror unleashed in Afghanistan, Iraq, and beyond. Threats persist, as we have seen this week, but some will argue, I am among them, that it is time to move beyond a war on terror and pay closer attention at home. We must find our way out of this dark wood. Let the debate rage on. But at this place, at this moment, we have a different mission. Here at Memorial Church, the sermon has traditionally been an exercise in connecting the dots between Scripture, Christian faith, and contemporary experience. It is not a place to seek policy answers, as we do at the Kennedy School, but to draw wisdom about our lives from our faith. You may then wonder, why am I here? Let me assure you, so do I. And I can guarantee, so does my wife Ann. As you know, behind many a Harvard man stands a woman, laughing. Others are far more worthy to speak. In view of this predicament, I thought it best this morning to dig back into our own memories here at this church, recalling what we learned through the teachings of our own pastor at the time, our beloved, yes, Reverend Peter J. Gomes. He is no longer here, but many of us, when asked our denomination, to continue to answer as Skip Gates once did, "We are Gomesians, sir." We honor him best by remembering his teachings. If he were here now, by the way, probably the first thing Peter would say is, "Now, David, keep it a little light." As you know, he believed that the central message of Christianity is not about life after death, but how we live before death. And he believed that laughter must be a vital part of living, even in somber moments. Many fondly recall when he told us one Easter service before sending out the collection plates, the good news is we have all the money we will ever need at Memorial Church. The bad news is that it's all in your pockets. He loved to tell of his visits with the Queen Mother in England. How often he would introduce the subject with a twinkle. If there is one thing neither the Queen Mother nor I can stand, it's a name dropper. That was Peter. The ultimate weapon, he once wrote, in the face of evil or sorrow, sadness or death, is not stoic virtue and the stiff upper lip, but laughter. For where laughter is, God cannot be far away. So what did Peter teach us a decade ago? And how might those lessons apply now? I will dwell here on his lesson from 9/11, but then turn to how our lives have changed since 9/11, and how, in my humble judgment, we should look afresh at our responsibilities as Christians. Let us begin by retracing Peter's path. On September 9th, 2001, 2 days before the attacks, Peter's opening sermon for the semester was based upon a lesson from Micah. That was one of our lessons today. The day after the attacks, he spoke at morning prayers. His closing prayers then will be our closing prayers now. His first full sermon in Memorial Church after the attacks was on September 23. His lesson then from Ecclesiasticus is among our lessons now. And the title he chose for that first sermon after 9/11 is our title today, in his memory: Outer Turmoil, Inner Strength. Down deep, Peter was less shocked by the attacks than one might suppose. In a book of his sermons from that period, dedicated incidentally to his dear friend Preston Williams, he wrote that after 9/11, he was frequently asked if the horrors of that day had changed his preaching plan for the year. Everyone knew, Dan Sanks, others knew, he planned his sermons for the year and the summer before. No, he responded, he didn't change his plan. Why? Because he had long believed that we live in a dangerous, precarious world, and that the role of preaching is to help us cope with that danger. In John's Gospel, he reminds us, Jesus famously said, "In the world ye shall have tribulation." That was the basis of the first point that Peter wanted us to understand about 9/11. In a time of ease and rampant materialism, he thought, too many Christians had embraced a misconception. They thought we had a deal with God. If we would live relatively good lives, God would look after America, protecting us from harm. Weren't we the chosen people, the city on a hill? So when terror struck, people cried, "Whatever happened to our deal? Has God gone to sleep on duty? Is he AWOL? Where is God?" But scriptures as well as history tell us something different, that life brings constant turmoil and tribulation. It all goes with the territory of being human. Just look at the history of the Jews from Egypt to the Holocaust, Peter argued. Look, too, at Ecclesiasticus from the Apocrypha, the lesson he chose for that first sermon after 9/11. My son, if you aspire to be a servant of the Lord, prepare yourself for testing. Prepare yourself for testing. Set a straight course and keep to it, and do not be dismayed in the face of adversity. The assumption underlying the entire passage is that life is tough. Deal with it. Or as Peter liked to say about coping with adversity, get used to it, get over it, get on with it. In his final book, The Scandalous Gospel of Jesus, Peter writes of a vibrant, educated woman who once came to him for counsel. She was struggling with a grim diagnosis of cancer. She had good medical care, but needed help in dealing with God's mercy and her own mortality. Peter recommended that she read through all of the 150 Psalms, preferably within 2 or 3 days, and come back. She did, and exclaimed, "Whoever wrote them had exactly my same sense of ups and downs, exaltation and despair." She came to understand that the Psalms, taken together, are a roller coaster of emotions, turmoil, frustration, unfairness, anger, and yes, joy and laughter. They gave her permission to respond to God and to her cancer as the psalmist had. God hadn't disappeared for her, nor for us. Instead, argued Peter, and this was his second basic point after 9/11, the coming of trouble is when people rediscover that God is still there.